My life had found a quiet rhythm after my husband, Thomas, passed. Not a sad quiet, just softer. After 40 years of teaching third grade, the silence in my Denver home should have felt lonely, but mostly it felt peaceful. My pension was modest, but combined with Thomas's life insurance and our careful savings, I was comfortable. I had planned for a retirement of gardening, reading, and maybe finally taking that trip to see the fall colors in Vermont. What I hadn't planned for was spending my supposed golden years being the family's personal bank. Not that it was new. For years, I'd been the one my daughter, Penelope, and her husband, Wyatt, called when they hit a rough patch. A late rent payment here, a car repair there. It started small, just a few $100s. I always helped. They were my family. Penelope was my only daughter, and like a lot of mothers, I just wanted to see her happy and settled. But the requests got bigger, the emergencies more frequent. A down payment on a car they couldn't really afford. Help with unexpected medical bills that turned out to be elective procedures. I'd always grit my teeth, feel a pang of worry about my own savings, but I'd send the money. They always had a convincing story, and I hated conflict. Caleb, my son, was younger and lived a more stable life, never asking for a dime. He didn't say much about Penelope and Wyatt's requests, but sometimes I caught a look in his eye, a flicker of something I couldn't quite read back then. Disapproval? Disappointment? Maybe both. I told myself I was being a supportive mother. Penelope always promised to pay me back, of course. The list of those loans grew longer than my grocery list. But deep down, a knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach every time the phone rang and I saw Penelope's name. Turning 60 felt like a milestone I wanted to celebrate. Not a huge, flashy party, just a warm gathering of close family at my house. I spent weeks planning, choosing the menu, dusting off the good china, making sure the garden looked its best. I even bought a new dress. I poured my heart into it, seeing it as a symbol of this new, peaceful chapter in my life, shared with the people I loved most. I covered all the costs myself, of course. Penelope and Wyatt offered to bring dessert, but even that felt more like a gesture than real help. The day of the party was beautiful. The sun was out, the air was crisp and cool, perfect for early fall in Colorado. Families started arriving: Caleb, my sister and her husband, a couple of cousins, and then Penelope and Wyatt. They swept in, bringing their usual whirlwind energy. Penelope immediately started rearranging some decorations, offering unsolicited advice, while Wyatt hovered awkwardly nearby, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. I tried to just enjoy having everyone there. There were moments of genuine warmth, laughing with my sister, a quiet conversation with Caleb on the patio. But even amidst the cheer, I felt that familiar, low-level hum of anxiety whenever Penelope and Wyatt were near. They made veiled comments about how lovely my house was, how set up I was now that Thomas was gone and I didn't have to worry about supporting two people. It felt calculating. Before the party, I'd quickly logged into my online banking on my laptop to check the balance for the caterer's final payment. I remember being distracted when the doorbell rang repeatedly. I must have closed the laptop lid too quickly, or maybe I didn't log out completely. I had my banking password written in a small notebook I kept near the computer, an old habit, one I'd always meant to break. It was something easy to remember, connected to Thomas, a pet name he had for me. I didn't think anything of it at the time. The party wound down. Goodbyes were exchanged. Penelope gave me a hug that felt a little too tight, a little too performative. Wyatt offered a quick nod. Caleb stayed a few minutes longer, helping me clear some plates, asking quietly if I was doing okay. I told him I was tired, but happy. He smiled, a rare, genuine smile, and left. Finally, the house was quiet. I sank onto the sofa, utterly exhausted but with a warm glow from seeing everyone. I didn't know that while I was cherishing those moments, something terrible, something violating, had already happened right under my roof. The next couple of days were a blur of unpacking gifts and tidying up. I felt content, looking forward to getting back to my routine. On Wednesday morning, I sat down at my laptop with a cup of tea. Time to pay those few remaining party bills and check my balance. I logged into my bank's website, the familiar layout appearing on the screen. My breath hitched. my eyes fixed on the number. It was wrong. Terribly, horribly wrong. My balance was thousands of dollars lower than it should have been. My mind scrambled. Had I forgotten a huge bill? Made a mistake? No, the number was too low. Much too low. My fingers trembled as I clicked on the transaction history. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in my chest. And there it was. Dated the day of the party. Multiple large transfers. $10,000 to Penelope Collins. $10,000 to Wyatt Collins. Another $5,000 to Penelope Collins. $25,000 gone. Just like that. The date and time stamp matched. It was during the party. While they were here, in my home. The room felt cold. A wave of nausea rolled over me. $25,000. A significant chunk of my retirement savings. Not a few hundred for a car repair. Not $1,000 for a fake medical bill. $25,000. It felt impossible. Who would do that? Who would dare? And then I knew. The transactions were right there in black and white. Penelope. Wyatt. My fingers hovered over my phone. Calling felt terrifying, but I had to know. I had to hear them say it. I dialed Penelope's number. It rang for a long time. Finally, she answered, her voice bright and airy. Hey, Mom. Everything packed away from the party. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. It came out raspy. Penelope. I just checked my bank account. A slight pause. Oh. Her tone shifted, just subtly. There are 3 large transfers to your account in Wyatt's. From my account. Totaling $25,000. I waited, my heart pounding, hoping against hope for an explanation. A mistake? Maybe she accidentally transferred to me? Another pause, longer this time. Then, incredibly, she sighed. A little impatient sound. Oh, that. Yeah, we did that. My blood ran cold. You did that? Without asking? Penelope, that's a huge amount of money. How? Oh, well, she said, her tone becoming casual again, like this was a minor inconvenience. We were just, using your laptop for a minute while you were talking to Aunt Carol. We saw your banking was open, you left your password out anyway. My stomach clenched. She admitted it so easily. Honestly, Mom, that money was just sitting there. Doing nothing. We really needed it. Needed it. My voice was rising now, trembling with disbelief and anger. Needed it for what? And how does needing it give you the right to steal from me? During my birthday party? In my own home. Steal is a strong word, Mom. Wyatt's voice cut in, sounding slightly muffled, like she'd put him on speaker. We're family. Families help each other out. Help. I choked out. Help means I agree to it. This is theft. How could you? $25,000. That's my savings. Like I said, you have plenty. Penelope snapped, her voice losing all pretense of casualness and hardening into defiance. Honestly, Mom, you're being dramatic. It was just sitting there. And we have a huge opportunity right now, but we needed liquid cash. We'll pay you back, eventually. Consider it an early inheritance. An early inheritance? I'm only 60. That money was for my retirement. My future. My voice cracked. Well, we need it for our future now, Penelope said, her tone final. Look, I gotta go. We'll talk about this later. And she hung up. Just like that. Leaving me standing in my quiet house, the silence ringing with the sound of my own pounding heart and the cold, unapologetic admission of my daughter and son-in-law. They hadn't just taken my money. They had taken it without a shred of guilt or apology, justifying it with entitlement and casual cruelty. The shock wore off, leaving a burning, cold fury and a deep, aching hurt. They had been in my home, partaking in my celebration, while actively violating my trust and stealing my financial security. I couldn't let it stand. I had to confront them, face to face. I needed them to see the damage they had done, to understand the gravity of their actions. Maybe, just maybe seeing me, hearing me, would break through their entitlement. I called Penelope back, my voice now steady, stripped of emotion like ice. I need to see you both. Today. We're not talking about this later. We're talking about this now. There was resistance, excuses, but I was unyielding. Eventually, they reluctantly agreed to come back to my house that afternoon. The hours waiting were agony. I paced, clutching my phone, replaying the conversation, the casualness of her admission. When their car pulled into my driveway, my stomach twisted. I took a deep breath, trying to project a calm strength I didn't feel. They came in looking defensive, Penelope crossing her arms, Wyatt standing slightly behind her, avoiding my eyes. There was none of the forced cheer from the party. The air crackled with tension. "We need to talk about the money," I stated, standing in the middle of my living room. Penelope sighed, rolling her eyes. "Here we go. Look, Mom, we said we'll pay you back." "You said you did it," I corrected, my voice low. "You admitted to taking $25,000 from my account without my knowledge or permission." "That's not borrowing, Penelope. That's theft." "Oh, stop being so dramatic," she burst out. "It's not like you're poor. You're retired. You have the house paid off. You have plenty of savings. That money was just sitting there. Plenty of savings that I worked my entire life for." I countered, my voice rising. "Savings that Thomas and I built together for our future. A future that now, thanks to you, is less secure. And how dare you say, just sitting there? It was my money. For my future." Wyatt finally spoke up, his voice placating but hollow. "Stella, we really needed it. We had this investment opportunity, a sure thing, but we needed cash right now. It would have made us set for life." "An investment opportunity?" I scoffed. "Or is this about those gambling debts Wyatt has? Or that failed online business you poured money into last year, Penelope? You needed this because you're irresponsible, not because of some opportunity." Penelope's face flushed. "How dare you? Snooping into our lives? You have no right to judge us. We're your children. You're supposed to help us. I have helped you. For years," I exclaimed, gesturing wildly. "Look at the list. Rent, cars, bills. I've given you thousands over the years. And you repay me by stealing from me? Breaking into my bank account like a common thief." "We're not thieves," Penelope shrieked, taking a step towards me. "We're your family. You owe us. You have so much and we have nothing, struggling constantly because you hoard everything." "I don't owe you anything," I retorted, standing my ground despite the knot of fear tightening in my stomach. "And I don't hoard my money. I saved it. Responsibly. Unlike you. That did it." Her face twisted in rage. "You selfish old woman," she screamed. And before I could react, she lunged forward and shoved me with both hands. It wasn't just a push. It was violent, born of pure fury. Caught off guard, elderly reflexes failing, I stumbled backward, tripping over the edge of the rug. I cried out as I fell, hitting the hardwood floor hard. A sharp pain shot up my left leg and hip. My head hit the floor with a sickening thud. I lay there for a moment, stunned, the wind knocked out of me. The pain in my hip and ankle was immediate and searing. But worse was the shock. My own daughter. She had just physically attacked me. Wyatt stepped forward, a look of alarm on his face, quickly masked. "Penelope, what the hell?" Penelope stood panting, her chest heaving. For a split second, she looked horrified. Then, her expression hardened again. "She made me." She was yelling, calling us names. I slowly, painfully, pushed myself up, leaning heavily on a nearby chair. Tears of pain and betrayal welled in my eyes. I looked at Penelope, at Wyatt standing passively beside her. The betrayal cut deeper than the physical pain. You pushed me," I whispered, my voice raw with disbelief. "You stole from me, and when I called you out on it, you pushed me to the ground." I looked at Wyatt. "And you just stand there." Penelope squared her shoulders. "Well, you shouldn't have provoked me." "You're fine." I winced, trying to put weight on my throbbing ankle. "I'm fine? You just assaulted your own mother." I looked at them both, my vision blurred with tears. The pain in my hip was spreading. "Get out," I said, my voice gaining strength, hardening with a newfound resolve born of anger and hurt. "Get out of my house. No. We're done. This is over." They hesitated for a moment, perhaps realizing the depth of what had just happened. Then, muttering something about me being crazy, they turned and walked out, leaving me alone on my living room floor, hurting and heartbroken. I managed to pull myself up, hobbling over to the sofa. The pain in my hip was a deep ache, and my left ankle was swelling rapidly. But the emotional pain was a gaping wound. My daughter. She had stolen from me, and then attacked me when I confronted her. The person I had loved, supported, and helped for her entire life. Sobbing, I fumbled for my phone and called the one person I knew I could count on. Eleanor. Stella? What's wrong? You sound terrible. Her voice was instantly full of concern. Eleanor, I choked out, tears streaming down my face. They stole from me. Penelope and Wyatt. They took $25,000. And when I confronted them, Penelope pushed me. I fell. I think I hurt myself. There was a stunned silence on the other end. Then, Eleanor's voice, sharp with outrage. She what? They stole? And she pushed you? Stella, stay right there. I'm coming over. Eleanor arrived within 20 minutes, taking one look at my tear-streaked face, my swollen ankle, and my carefully tended living room now tainted by violence, and her face hardened with a fury that mirrored my own. She gently helped me assess my injuries. Thankfully, no broken bones, but a severe sprain and deep bruising. She made me some tea and just sat with me while I poured out the whole story. The missing money, the casual admission, the terrible confrontation, the push, the fall. Eleanor listened, her eyes blazing. Stella, this is unbelievable. This isn't just family drama. This is theft. This is assault. Once the immediate shock subsided a little, a cold determination set in. They couldn't get away with this. But how? I felt overwhelmed. Eleanor, ever practical, knew what we needed to do. First, we need to document everything, she said. Take pictures of your bruises, your ankle. Get that notebook with your password out. Print out those bank statements. Together, we started the painful process. Printing the statements showing the transfers. Finding the small notebook with the password hint. Eleanor helped me organize years of old bank records and email archives. It was during this that the true scope of my enabling hit me. Loan after loan, gift after gift. Thousands upon thousands over the years. Promises to repay, always broken. Excuses upon excuses. I saw the pattern laid bare. They weren't just in a rough patch. They were chronic financial abusers, and I had allowed it. Oh God, Eleanor, I whispered, looking at the stack of papers. I let this happen. I kept giving them money. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to believe my own daughter could be like this. Eleanor put a hand on my arm. Stella, you were trying to be a loving mother. You weren't enabling them because you were weak. You were enabling them because you were hopeful. You wanted a good relationship with your daughter. They chose to exploit your generosity. That's on them, not you. Her words helped, but the shame was still there. The thought of going to the police involving the law against my own daughter. It was terrifying. I don't know if I can do this, Eleanor, I confessed. Report my own child? Stella, she said firmly. If a stranger broke into your house and stole $25,000 and then shoved you down, you'd call the police in a heartbeat, right? You wouldn't hesitate. Just because it's your daughter doesn't make it less of a crime. It makes it worse. They not only stole your money, they shattered your trust and hurt you physically. They need to be held accountable. For your sake, and to stop them from ever doing this to anyone else. Including possibly Caleb down the line. Her words resonated. Caleb, my quiet, good-hearted son. Would they eventually turn on him if he had savings? The thought solidified my resolve. I couldn't protect them anymore. I had to protect myself. Okay, I said, taking a deep breath. Okay, let's call the police. Calling the police was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Having to tell a stranger that my own daughter and son-in-law had stolen from me and assaulted me felt surreal, like a nightmare. Officer Ramirez, a calm professional officer from the Financial Crimes Unit, came to my house a couple of days later. He listened patiently, took notes, and photographed my bruising and swollen ankle. I showed him the bank statements, the old records of financial help, the notebook with the password hint. "This is financial exploitation, Miss Brooks," he said, his voice serious but not unkind. "And based on your account and your injury, there are grounds for charges of theft and assault." He explained the process. They would investigate, verify the transactions, interview Penelope and Wyatt, and build a case. It would then go to the district attorney's office to decide whether to press charges. News travels fast, especially toxic news in families. Within days of me filing the report, my phone started buzzing. Calls I didn't answer. Texts I barely read. From Penelope, alternating between furious accusations. "How could you? You're ruining our lives." And manipulative guilt trips. "Is money really more important than your own daughter? Mom, please don't do this." Wyatt sent a few, mostly terse, blaming messages. And then there were the calls and texts from other family members, my sister, cousins. Some were shocked and supportive, but others, clearly fed a twisted version of events by Penelope, were confused or even critical. "Stella, what's going on? Penelope says you're trying to put her in jail over a little misunderstanding." A cousin texted, "Is this really necessary?" "It's family." Penelope was clearly working the phones, painting herself as the victim of a cruel, greedy mother. Amidst this chaos, a text came from Caleb. "Mom, can I come see you? I heard. I need to talk." Caleb came over that evening. He looked pale and stressed. I showed him my bruises, the still swollen ankle. I showed him the stack of financial records, the overwhelming evidence of Penelope and Wyatt's history of taking advantage. I told him everything, the theft, the confrontation, the push. He listened silently, his jaw tight. I knew they asked you for money a lot," he said quietly. "I always felt weird about it. They always seemed to have a new car or go on a trip right after you helped them." I told him about the police report, the potential charges. He flinched but didn't argue. "Penelope called me," he said, looking down. "She said you're being crazy, that she just accidentally pushed you because you were yelling. She wants me to tell anyone who asks that you're exaggerating, that it's just a family matter." I met his eyes. "Caleb, your sister stole a huge amount of my savings, money your father and I worked our entire lives for. And when I asked her about it, she threw me to the floor in my own house. That's not a misunderstanding or a family matter. That's a crime." He was quiet for a long moment, wrestling with something. Then he took a deep breath. "Mom, I saw something. A few weeks ago, I was at Penelope and Wyatt's place. Wyatt's laptop was open, and I saw an email on the screen before he closed it. It was about an investment deal that went south. A big one. They were talking about needing to find $20,000 in cash immediately, or they'd lose everything. And there was another email to a lawyer asking about bankruptcy options. They weren't looking for an opportunity. They were desperate because they blew a ton of money." My heart ached for the truth of his words, but also swelled with a cautious hope. "Caleb, would you be willing to tell that to the police? Or in court, if it comes to that?" He looked up, his gaze steady. "Yes, Mom. I will. I can't stand by anymore. It's not right. They need to stop hurting people. And you deserve justice." Tears filled my eyes again, but these were different. They were tears of relief and gratitude. In the midst of feeling completely betrayed by one child, the other had stepped up, stronger and braver than I had ever realized. Weeks turned into months. The police investigation moved forward. Officer Ramirez kept me informed they had verified the transfers, confirmed the bank account access happened from an IP address traced back to Penelope and Wyatt's home shortly after the party ended, and had taken statements from them, in which they reportedly downplayed everything and stuck to their story of borrowing and an accidental push. The district attorney decided to move forward. Charges were filed: felony theft for the unauthorized bank transfers and a misdemeanor for the assault. It was surreal seeing my daughter and son-in-law's names on court documents as defendants. The preliminary hearing was set. My anxiety was through the roof. Going into a courtroom, facing them, dredging it all up again. Eleanor was with me every step of the way, reviewing the evidence, listening to my fears. And Caleb. He was nervous too, but his resolve hadn't wavered. Walking into the courthouse felt like entering a different world, cold, formal, imposing. Seeing Penelope and Wyatt sitting across the aisle in the courtroom, looking stiff and uncomfortable, was jarring. They avoided my gaze. Their lawyers sat with them, whispering instructions. There were a few other family members there, some who nodded cautiously at me, others who sat near Penelope and Wyatt, shooting me disapproving glances. The family was fractured, and this courtroom was where the fault lines met. The judge, a serious woman with kind but sharp eyes, called the case. The prosecutor laid out the state's case, the evidence of the transfers, the method of access, Stella's report of the assault, showing photos of my injuries. I had to take the stand and recount, under oath, the discovery of the theft, the phone call, the confrontation, the shove, the fall, the pain. It was incredibly difficult, my voice trembling at times, but I got through it. Penelope and Wyatt's lawyer cross-examined me, trying to poke holes in my story, suggesting I was confused, exaggerating, or that the money was a gift I had forgotten about, painting me as a wealthy, stingy parent upset about a mere loan they intended to repay. They even implied that my injury was just a clumsy fall, nothing to do with Penelope. It was frustrating, but I held my ground, stating the facts clearly. Then Caleb was called. My heart swelled with pride and fear for him. He walked to the witness stand, looking young and a little overwhelmed, but he sat up straight. The prosecutor asked him what he knew. Caleb spoke clearly, his voice steadying as he went on. He talked about how Penelope and Wyatt frequently asked me for money, how he'd felt uncomfortable with it. He recounted the emails he saw on Wyatt's laptop, proving their desperate financial situation wasn't due to an opportunity, but a loss, and their consideration of bankruptcy. He spoke about Penelope and Wyatt's attempts to pressure him after I filed the report, to get him to lie or downplay what happened. Then, he looked towards the judge, his voice unwavering. They weren't just asking for help anymore. They were taking advantage. They lied about needing the money for something legitimate. And when my mother confronted them about stealing her savings, my sister attacked her. It wasn't an accident. They were backed into a corner by their own bad choices, and they hurt her because she wouldn't just let them get away with it. They knew what they were doing. And I can't pretend I didn't see it. A hush fell over the courtroom. Penelope gasped, her face turning ashen. Wyatt stared straight ahead, rigid. Caleb's testimony, coming from within the family, uncolored by my emotional pain, was powerful. It corroborated my account and provided crucial insight into Penelope and Wyatt's motives and lack of remorse. When the hearing ended, Caleb came over to me. I hugged him tightly. "Thank you," I whispered. "You were so brave." He hugged me back. "I love you, Mom." I could not tell the truth. The waiting period for the judge's final ruling felt interminable. Every phone call, every email made me jump. Eleanor was a constant presence, reminding me that I had done everything I could, that the outcome was now out of my hands. Finally, the day arrived. Back in the same courtroom, the same tense atmosphere. Penelope and Wyatt were there, looking visibly stressed. Their lawyer looked grim. Caleb and Eleanor were by my side. The judge entered and began reading her decision. She referenced the evidence presented, the bank records, my testimony, Officer Ramirez's findings, and most importantly, Caleb's testimony regarding Penelope and Wyatt's financial state and their attempts to influence him. The court finds the defendants, Penelope Collins and Wyatt Collins, guilty of felony theft, the judge stated clearly. The evidence demonstrates unauthorized access and misappropriation of funds totaling $25,000 from the plaintiff's account. She then addressed the assault charge. The court also finds Ms. Penelope Collins guilty of assault against Ms. Stella Brooks, supported by the plaintiff's testimony, documented injury, and witness testimony. A collective intake of breath in the room. The judge then proceeded to sentencing. For the felony theft, Ms. Penelope Collins and Mr. Wyatt Collins are sentenced to a period of supervised probation for 3 years. They are ordered to pay full restitution to Ms. Stella Brooks in the amount of $25,000 within 90 days. Additionally, due to the emotional harm and physical injury caused by their actions, they are ordered to pay an additional $5,000 in damages to Ms. Brooks. My breath hitched. Restitution and damages. A tangible acknowledgement of the cost. Furthermore, the judge continued, looking directly at Penelope, Ms. Penelope Collins is also fined $1,000 for the assault charge and is ordered to complete mandatory anger management counseling. A restraining order is hereby issued against both Penelope Collins and Wyatt Collins, prohibiting any contact with Ms. Stella Brooks, directly or indirectly, for a period of 5 years. The room was silent except for the rustle of papers. Penelope looked like she might faint. Wyatt stared blankly ahead. I sat frozen, not from fear anymore, but from the sheer weight of it all. Justice. It felt heavy, not victorious. It was the end of a painful chapter, but also the formal severing of a relationship I had desperately wanted to save. Leaving the courthouse, the air outside felt crisp and clean. Caleb and Eleanor walked beside me. We didn't say much at first. You did it, Mom, Caleb said softly. You stood up to them. You did too, Caleb, I replied, squeezing his arm. You were amazing. In the weeks and months that followed, the consequences for Penelope and Wyatt unfolded. They struggled to come up with the restitution money. Wyatt lost his job after the court records became public. I heard through the grapevine and from Caleb, who stayed in touch but kept a distance from Penelope and Wyatt, that they were facing serious financial hardship and were even considering selling their house to pay the judgment. Other family members remained divided, some supportive of me, others resentful, solidifying the break. The restraining order meant there was no contact from Penelope or Wyatt. At first, the silence felt strange, an absence where drama used to be. But slowly, that absence began to feel like peace. I focused on healing, both my ankle and my heart. Eleanor remained a steadfast friend. My relationship with Caleb deepened, built on honesty and mutual respect. I never got back the $25,000 within 90 days, or even 6 months. It became a slow, difficult process through the courts. But the money wasn't the most important thing anymore. Looking back, I saw it clearly. My family wasn't broken by me filing a police report or going to court. It was broken by years of entitlement, manipulation, and ultimately, by an act of theft and violence from the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. I hadn't destroyed my family. I had simply refused to be destroyed by them. The peace I found wasn't the quiet I'd imagined in retirement, not soft and gentle. It was a harder, more resilient peace, earned through conflict and loss. But it was mine. And standing on my own 2 feet, without the weight of their expectations or the fear of their next demand, felt like true freedom.